All right, I'm going to pull back the curtain on something that's going to piss people off, but this truth needs to be told. Let me tell you what I'm seeing constantly. Regular guys. Men hitting their 40s, not titans of industry. Not male models are suddenly getting hit up by the very women who wouldn't have spit on them if they were on fire 15 years ago. These are the women who burned through their 20s and 30s, dismissing any man who wasn't over 6 feet, who didn't pull in 6 figures, who wasn't the entire goddamn fantasy package. And now, all of a sudden, these exact women are sliding into DMs, acting interested, claiming their impossible checklists are now negotiable, and the men are just baffled. They're left wondering, is this it? Have I finally leveled up? Am I actually desirable now? Did I become the prize? And before you jump in the comments with your bullshit, let me ask you a direct question. When, exactly, did you get so hot? Was it at 42? When you had less hair than you did at 25? Was it when your body started storing fat like a bear in winter? Was it when a decade of grinding in a cubicle carved permanent stress lines into your face? Seriously, take a second and think. The brutal answer is you didn't. You didn't magically get more attractive. Something else shifted. The entire market flipped. And when you finally grasp what really went down, you'll see this newfound attention for the desperate transaction it really is. Let me lay it all out for you. Picture a financial market. On one side, you've got the buyers. On the other, the sellers. For decades, the buyers held all the cards. They could afford to be obscenely picky. They demanded top-tier assets for bargain bin prices. They could write off 95% of the available inventory and still have a line out the door. But then, the system buckled. The supply chain broke. Demand, however, stayed ravenous. All at once, those hyper-selective buyers are now in a dogfight, scrambling over the scraps of what's left. And the sellers they scorned for years, those assets aren't just sitting on the shelf anymore. Many got locked into long-term contracts with other buyers. Others just pulled themselves off the market entirely. This is precisely what is happening in the dating economy for women over 40. And it's the hidden engine driving all this attention that average men are suddenly being flooded with. Let's look at the market dynamics when she was 25. We'll call her Jessica. She's at some entry-level marketing gig, pulling in maybe $40,000 a year, splitting rent with roommates, and her car is a beat-to-hell Honda Civic. But online, she's swimming in matches from surgeons, attorneys, and Wall Street guys, men. Earning 6 figures, men with property, men who are 6'2" and chiseled, with curated, interesting lives. She's getting wined and dined by successful 35-year-old men at places she can't afford. Men who pay for everything and fight for a slice of her time. And this builds a critical, fatal illusion. The fact that she can match with these elite men, that she can land dates with them. She misinterprets this access as her actual market value. She believes, this is my league. This is the caliber of man I am entitled to. But here's the brutal truth. She doesn't get the truth. Most 25-year-old women can't comprehend attention has zero correlation with commitment. These powerful men in their 30s and 40s, they're just using her for casual entertainment. They have no intention of ever committing. They're enjoying the perks of a young, beautiful woman with a clean slate, no baggage, no ex-husband, no kids, no fortress of emotional walls built from 2 decades of romantic train wrecks. But she cannot see this distinction. All she registers are the matches, the expensive dates, the validation from men at the top of the food chain. And her internal calculus concludes, this is my floor. So when a normal 27-year-old guy making a solid $55,000, driving a normal car, living in a decent place, a guy who would actually build a life with her shows up, she instantly rejects him. He's not tall enough, not rich enough, not thrilling enough. Her inbox has hundreds of other options. She can afford to be a ruthless gatekeeper. The power dynamic is completely skewed in her favor. This is how the filtering process actually worked, and this is pulled from raw data from the platforms. Height must be a minimum of 6 feet. That single filter just wiped out 85% of the male population. Income needs to be making at least $75,000 to $100,000. By the time her brutal checklist is complete, she's targeting a sliver of the population, maybe 2 to 3% of men on the entire platform. And the kicker is, these men in the top 2 to 3% know goddamn well they're the prize. They are drowning in options. So why on earth would they lock themselves down with her when an endless supply of beautiful women in their 20s is available to them indefinitely? But that cold, hard math just doesn't compute for her yet. She's 25. Time is an infinite resource. A real relationship is a problem for her future self. Right now, it's all about career, friends, travel, living her best life. She figures she'll get serious and settle down when she feels like it. Once she finally finds a man who ticks every single impossible box. Are you starting to see the fucking picture? Now let's jump forward. She's 32. Jessica's doing a bit better at work. Maybe she's clearing $65,000 now. But the dating economy has undergone a seismic shift she never saw coming. Those high-powered men in their late 30s and 40s who were whining and dining her at 25, they are now dating a fresh crop of women in their mid-20s. Jessica is no longer the hot new asset in their portfolio. She's now competing against women 5 to 7 years younger who possess the exact currency she once had: youth, a lack of cynicism, no baggage. Her matches start to dry up. The quality of men in her inbox plummets. The guys messaging her are a clear step down from the league she was used to. But her expectations haven't budged an inch because her self-worth is still pegged to her 25-year-old stock price. In her mind, she still deserves the A-listers she was getting attention from years ago. And so she starts to echo that bitter, familiar refrain, "Where have all the good men gone?" So you're asking, why is every good man taken? You tell yourself the comfortable lies men are just threatened by your success. They simply can't handle a strong woman. Let's call those what they are stories. Excuses you build to protect your ego from the brutal, underlying truth. The game changed, but she refuses to update her strategy to reflect her real-world value. At 32, she can still find players, just not the all-stars she still thinks she deserves. Those genuinely interested men, the decent guys earning $60,000 to $80,000 a year, the kind of solid men who would actually commit. She dismisses them as static because her brain is still stuck on the flood of attention she got when she was 25, and she's convinced that's her permanent reality, her baseline. But that's right before the floor gives out. Somewhere between 36 and 40, the delusion shatters. The biological deadline that was just a whisper in her 20s is now a deafening alarm she can't ignore. If she wants to have children, the opportunity is vanishing. Cold, hard medical data doesn't give a damn about her career milestones. Fertility doesn't just dip after 35, it falls off a cliff. After 40, it's in a nosedive. This is not a talking point. This is biology. And if she doesn't want kids, she's staring down the barrel of a completely different crisis. The very men she spent a decade rejecting everyone else for. They're gone. They're partnered up. The high-achieving, attractive men now in their 40s. The vast majority are married or locked into long-term, serious relationships. And the few who are left, they're either carrying catastrophic baggage, are exclusively pursuing women 10 to 15 years younger, or they're divorce-scarred veterans who are now armored against commitment. Boom. Her dating pool didn't just get smaller, it became a barren desert. And suddenly, those average guys she ghosted at 25 and 30 are starting to look like an oasis. Let me explain what actually happened. And I'm not going to use feelings. I'm going to use the cold calculus of market economics. In any market on earth, value is dictated by two things: supply and demand. In the dating market, age completely transforms these dynamics. A woman at 25 is a blue-chip stock. The supply of interested men is enormous, allowing her to be brutally selective. Her perceived market value is at its absolute peak. She dictates the terms. She holds all the power. A woman at 40. The supply of interested men in her age bracket has collapsed. She is now competing against younger women for a tiny pool of high-value men while staring down the barrel of her own biological timeline. The power dynamic has completely inverted. Now, a man at 25, he has a low perceived value. He's not established. He's a speculative asset. He's forced to compete against older, wealthier men, giving him almost no leverage. But a man at 40, if he has built a life of value, his stock price has soared. His dating options now span from women aged 25 to 45. He has exponentially more choices than he did at 25. The power is now his. This is the great correction. The leverage that was entirely hers at 25 has now transferred to you at 40. And the women who treated you like you were invisible years ago are now painfully aware that you're the one holding all the cards. Let me give you a real-world case study. A guy I know, We'll call him Mike. He's 43, makes a good living, nothing insane, but he's a solid guy. Average looking, stable career. In his 20s, women treated him like he didn't exist. He'd fire off messages on dating apps and be lucky to get one single response out of every 20 he sent. Dates were a rarity. Relationships were a fantasy. Fast forward to today. At 43, women are messaging him first. Women with master's degrees, women with impressive careers, women who are attractive, accomplished the entire package he was told he could never have. And Mike is totally confused. He's asking me, what changed? Did I magically get hot? I told him, Mike, listen to me. Nothing about you changed. Just look at yourself at 25 versus 43. You are, by all conventional standards, less physically attractive now. You've got less hair, a few more pounds, more stress in your face, but the women hitting you up now, their options changed. The men they actually had their sights set on at 25 are no longer on the market at 40. So by default, you now look like a great option. It's not because you leveled up, it's because their alternative was eliminated. Now, here are the red flags you watch for. She's in a frantic hurry. She's pushing for commitment way too fast, dropping hints about moving in after a couple of months, mentioning marriage or kids within weeks. This has absolutely nothing to do with you. This is about her schedule. She's working against a ticking clock. And pay attention when she still talks about her type. I normally date men who are taller. I'm usually drawn to more of an adventurous type. I typically end up with someone a little more successful. She is telling you, point blank, that you are not what she actually wants. You are the compromise she is being forced to make because her preferred options are gone. You can literally see her settling in real time. You will notice the flicker of disappointment when she sees your apartment isn't what she'd hoped for. You'll see it when she notices your car is practical, not a status symbol. When your idea of a vacation is modest, she is constantly, painfully recalibrating her life's expectations in a downward spiral. She will constantly make comparisons. She'll reference ex-boyfriends who made more money, who were better looking, who were more exciting. She'll talk about the life she had pictured for herself versus the one you can actually offer. She is actively mourning the loss of the man and the life she felt she was entitled to. I knew this woman. Let's call her Sarah. For years, her process for vetting men was absolutely merciless. Amas is not tall enough, not rich enough, not accomplished enough. I'm not exaggerating. She kept a literal spreadsheet of her requirements. Minimum height, minimum salary, minimum number of countries visited, minimum education level, minimum value of his vehicle, and the entire time, she herself was working a go-nowhere entry-level job. Fast forward to age 38. All of those non-negotiable demands suddenly became nice-to-haves, and then they just became optional. She started dating a man who wouldn't have passed the first line on her spreadsheet at 28. A good guy, stable, and average in every single measurable way. But here is the raw truth of what I saw. She resented him for it. She never said it out loud, but you could see it in her eyes. He was her consolation prize, and she hated him for being the living proof of her failure. It was every single meal at some soulless chain restaurant instead of a place with real ambition. It was every ride in his reliable, boring sedan when she secretly craved a statement. It was every glance at her friends who got married younger and were now living lives that looked so much better, so much more complete. She made a compromise, and she hated herself for it, even though the decision was 100% hers. And this is the part men never see coming. When a woman settles, a quiet resentment takes root. It's a poison that builds, even if she never consciously admits it's there. She thinks about her friend who married at 28, who picked a perfectly ordinary guy. He seemed like nothing special back then. But they worked together. They built a life from the ground up. Now, at 40, that same couple owns a beautiful home. They have an established life, kids in their teens, and a bond that runs bone deep. That life could have been hers, with any one of the decent, average men who wanted her in her 20s. Instead, she looks at the successful men her own age, and she sees them with women in their late 20s. And a cold, hard truth settles in high value. Single men her age are not looking for women their age. They have absolutely no incentive to. This is the psychological cage she's trapped in. She knows she let the clock run out. She knows her standards were impossibly high. She knows she gambled on her ability to attract a top-tier man forever. And the house won. But she can't face that truth, because to admit it would shatter her entire sense of self. So, all that bitterness, all that resentment, finds a target, you become the living symbol of her compromise. Every accommodation she makes for you feels like another piece of evidence confirming her own failure. And this manifests in ugly, subtle ways. Igniting arguments over nothing, holding your relationship up against everyone else's, where it always falls short. A chronic dissatisfaction with everything you offer. An unshakable belief that the grass is greener somewhere else, always scanning the horizon for a better deal, just in case one appears. Now, if you're with a divorced woman over 40, you're dealing with a whole other level of complexity. That ex-husband is a ghost that never leaves the picture, and his presence taints everything. She measures everything you do against the memory of her marriage. Your relationship is never allowed to stand on its own 2 feet. It's in a constant, rigged competition against her past, and memory is a liar. That marriage ended for catastrophic reasons. But with time, she'll paint the good moments in gold, while you're stuck dealing with the grit and grind of the present reality. The financial warfare, child support, alimony, assets tied up in legal knots, her financial instability becomes your problem. If you get serious, her ex's financial choices have a direct ripple effect on her, which means they have a direct ripple effect on you. And then there are the kids. You're never just dating her. You are stepping into a pre-existing, complicated family unit where her ex-husband holds permanent leverage over her schedule, her stress levels, her priorities, and her bank account. You will never come before the kids, and through those kids, her ex has a permanent key to her life. Consider the emotional shrapnel. Divorce is a dirty, messy war. She's carrying the trauma, the betrayal, the defensive walls forged in years of conflict. You get to inherit that entire toxic legacy. In every fight you have, you're not just fighting with her, you're fighting the ghosts of every argument she had in her marriage. Let's break down the actual numbers, because this isn't just a theory. This is the cold, brutal math of the situation. You, as a 40-year-old man, can realistically date women from 25 to 45. That gives you a dating pool spanning 2 decades worth of women. If you have your finances in order and you're in decent shape, you are a hot commodity. Women in their 20s and early 30s are actively seeking older men who offer stability and resources. Now, her at 40. The vast majority of successful men her age are already married, or they're dating much younger women. Trying to date younger men, guys in their 30s, is almost always a short-term dead end. Those men are laser-focused on women in their 20s and early 30s for starting a family. And dating older men, guys in their 50s and up, means taking on their baggage, their potential health problems, and the complications of their impending retirement. Her pool of viable, desirable, and available men has shrunk to maybe 5 to 10% of what it was when she was 25. This, right here, is why average men suddenly appear on her radar. It's not because you suddenly got more attractive, it's because all of her other options vanished into thin air. Then there's the fertility crisis. This makes people squirm. But you cannot have an honest conversation about dating over 40 without staring this biological reality right in the face. Biology doesn't care about politics. It just is. A woman at 25 has about a 25% chance of getting pregnant in any given cycle. At 40, that number plummets to around 5%. By 45, it's less than 1%. These are not opinions. This is medical fact. So if a 40-year-old woman wants children of her own, she is staring down the barrel of drastically lower fertility and a massive increase in risk. We're talking about severe complications, sky-high miscarriage rates, a greater chance of genetic defects, and incredibly expensive fertility treatments that have abysmal success rates. The window is almost completely shut. This biological clock creates a state of sheer desperation. That average guy she wouldn't have even seen at 25 suddenly looks like a viable option at 40, because he represents a last-ditch chance to have a child. Her standards didn't just drop, they fell off a cliff. Not because the man became a better catch, but because her own biology stripped her of the ability to be selective. For a man, the fertility decline is nowhere near as severe. A man at 40 can still have perfectly healthy children. A man at 50 can still have perfectly healthy children. This fundamental imbalance causes a seismic shift in the power dynamics of the dating market. So, if you're a regular guy in your 40s, and you're suddenly getting attention from women who would have walked right past you 15 years ago, you need to understand exactly what is happening. You are not her prize. You are her pragmatism. There is a massive difference. She isn't with you because you're the man she always dreamed of. She's with you because the men she dreamed of are no longer available to her, and you are the most logical choice left on the board. Now, this doesn't mean genuine feelings are impossible for her. People can learn to love the deal they took, but you need to walk into this knowing exactly what asset you are in her long-term financial plan. Don't mistake her desperation for flattery. If she's pushing for a merger this fast, if she's talking about locking things down this early, it's not because you're some prize she's terrified of losing. It's because her biological clock is a ticking time bomb and you just happen to be qualified and available. The entire power structure has inverted. Suddenly, for the first time in your life, you might actually hold the better cards. Women your age are looking. Younger women might be looking too, if you've built something for yourself. This is a completely foreign landscape for any man who spent his 20s and 30s being systematically disqualified. Don't let this newfound attention corrupt your judgment. Settling is a two-way street. Just because she's settling for you gives you zero obligation to settle for her. You are now in a position to have standards. You can be the one who filters based on her character, on real chemistry, on genuine desire, on whether your lives actually align. You don't have to gratefully accept any offer that comes your way. This is the brutal truth men in their 40s are starting to wake up to. It's often logistically simpler to date women who are significantly younger. A 40-year-old man with a 28-year-old woman is playing an entirely different sport. She's not carrying the same kind of debt. There's no ex-husband on the books, no kids from a prior venture, and usually, none of the emotional scar tissue from a decade of bad investments. You're dealing with someone who isn't a cynic, who isn't burned out, who still has some optimism in her portfolio. She fundamentally respects a man's success. Younger women can actually appreciate a man who is established, who has his affairs in order, who represents security. To her, your average 40-year-old success is aspirational. To a woman your own age, it's the bare minimum entry fee. There's no biological panic button being mashed. A 28-year-old might want a family down the road, but she isn't working against a hostile deadline. The entire venture can grow organically, free from the desperate, frantic energy of someone watching their window of opportunity slam shut. You hold the higher value stock. In a relationship with a woman in her late 20s, you are the one with more options, deeper experience, and greater resources. The balance of power is in your favor. Contrast that with dating women your age, where she is constantly running the numbers, wondering if she sold herself short. This is exactly why successful men in their 40s and 50s so often partner with younger women. It's not just about the physical appeal. It's because the entire dynamic is fundamentally healthier when you are the one with the superior valuation. For any woman listening to this, your window to lock down a high-quality man is in your 20s and early 30s. Not because of vanity, but because that's when your market value is at its absolute peak and you have maximum leverage. That whole focus on yourself mantra, that piece of advice has single-handedly sabotaged millions of women out of the exact life they claimed they wanted. If you are serious about a husband and a family, you cannot treat it like a casual hobby into your mid to late 30s and expect the same outcome you would have gotten at 25. The market does not care about your feelings. Your biology does not care about your career. And for men in their 40s, do not mistake this sudden flood of interest for genuine desire. You need to understand your function. You didn't magically get more handsome. You just became a viable option in a marketplace with rapidly shrinking supply. You must be strategic. If a woman over 40 is showing interest, you have to ask yourself, would she have given me the time of day 15 years ago? Is this interest rooted in who I am as a man or what I represent as a solution? Is there any real proof of raw attraction, or is this just a pragmatic, a calculated choice? Is she rushing this because of me, or is she rushing this because of her schedule? Here is the cold, hard truth that makes everybody squirm. The dating market runs on supply, demand, and value, just like every other goddamn market on this planet. And in this market, different assets have different values at different points in time. Youth and fertility are assets with a market value. And it doesn't matter if we like it or not. Men are hardwired at a biological level to find those traits attractive because they signal reproductive viability. This isn't a cultural preference. This is evolutionary programming. Resources, stability, and status also have a market value. And women are hardwired to value these things because they signal the ability to provide and protect. Again, this isn't culture, it's deep primal code. These instincts don't just vanish because we have smartphones and office jobs. This programming is ancient, it is deep, and it is powerful. The only thing that changes is the balance of negotiating power at different stages of life. A woman's power is greatest in her 20s because her youth and fertility are at their peak valuation. A man's power grows into his 40s, provided he has built his resources and established stability. Because his assets appreciate with age, while a woman's primary biological asset depreciates. This isn't fair. This isn't equal. It is simply the state of the market. If you are a man in your 40s, you have options you never had at 25. Option 1, date women your own age. Just understand the liability you're taking on. More baggage, declining fertility, and the high probability that she is settling for you. You'll deal with a desperate timeline and constant comparisons to men from her past. It can work. But you walk into that deal with your eyes wide open. Option 2, date younger. If you're established and have some appeal, women in their late 20s and early 30s may be open for business. You bring the stability they crave. They bring the youth and lack of complications you want. The power dynamic is tilted in your favor. Then there's the third path. Stay solo. Protect your liberty, your capital, your damn peace of mind. You are not obligated to give anyone a partnership. If none of the available prospects genuinely stir something in you, refuse to settle just because the attention is finally coming your way. The only thing that counts is that your decision is a conscious one, that you grasp the brutal mechanics at play and aren't deluding yourself that this newfound interest means you've magically become her ideal man. Women past the age of 40 are finally paying attention to regular guys for one simple reason: the market had a violent correction. The absolute power they held at 25 has completely disintegrated by 40, and in a dating pool that has been decimated, the average man is suddenly the most valuable asset available. This has nothing to do with hating women. This is not about getting even. This is about a cold, hard understanding of market forces so you can make a calculated decision about your life, your commitment, and what you truly demand for yourself. Those women who screened you out without a second thought at 25, they haven't suddenly developed a burning attraction for the man you are today. They are making a pragmatic choice based on the severely limited inventory they have left to work with. There is a vast, unbridgeable chasm between being selected out of pure desire and being selected because all other better options have vanished. Yes, it is possible to forge a real connection with someone who originally saw you as a concession. People can and do learn to love the person they settled for, but you must walk into that arrangement with your eyes wide open to what it is, not dressing it up in a fantasy it can never be. The entire market has inverted. You now possess a power you never had. Wield it intelligently. Do not squander this newfound leverage on a woman who simply ran out of choices, someone now scrambling to lock you down before her own clock runs out for good. You have earned the right to be someone's first, undeniable choice, not their grim-faced last resort. And at 40, for the first time in your entire existence, you might finally hold the leverage to demand exactly that. The truth is unforgiving. Market forces are indifferent to your feelings about fairness or how you wish things were. They respond only to supply, demand, and perceived value. Grasping these mechanics isn't being cynical, it's about refusing to be a fool. Because the moment you see the gears of the market turning, you can never unsee them. And that raw knowledge fundamentally alters your entire approach to dating, to relationships, and to what you will tolerate from the very people who ignored you for 2 decades and are only now calling your name.